right. Greetings, everybody. I'm Larry Williams, the director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, and now within the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech. It is October 19th, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another version of our Quick Chats. And today I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with Lillian Eby, who is professor of industrial organizational psychology at the University of Georgia. You may know also the current editor of Journal of Applied Psychology, and we're chatting in preparation or as background for her upcoming webcast on November 12th. So Lillian, always a pleasure to see you and get the chance to interact with you. So I hope your day's off to a good start so far.
It is. Thanks a lot, Larry. I really appreciate you having me.
So, some folks with Knoxville connections may know that in the mid-90s, I was there twice on the faculty in the IO Psych program, first time on sabbatical, and then a second time a year as a faculty member. And Lillian, I think at least for part, if not all of that time, your office was right across the hall from mine. And I'm just thinking, how can this person work so much? It just seemed to me that you were in there all hours of all days getting things done. And clearly that's a pattern of work that you have sustained, which has helped get you where you are. So where does that drive and focus come from? Have you always had it? Was there some turning point, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get asked this quite a bit, and I don't really know that I have a great answer. I will tell you that my path to academia and to where I am has been really circuitous. And if you would have seen me, 25 years ago, you never would have predicted that I would be sitting here today talking to you and being editor-in-chief at JAP. So, I fell into psychology, and I love our field, and I love what we do. And I just find it so engaging, but I haven't always, I have multiple lives. So this has been, I think once I found my place, it just became a lot easier for me to focus. And I wanted it really bad. I'm not one of these people that things come super easy to. So I felt like I had to work pretty hard. And I felt like I really had something to prove. So that's kind of the short story.
Yeah. Well, you clearly have worked hard, and you have proved it. And of course, you've done that, particularly over the past few years during challenging times related to COVID. So how have you been doing? How was getting through it, continuing through it, dealing with work, family, all of that? How's that gone for you?
Yeah, it's been hard, but I feel so fortunate to have the kind of security that we have as academics, job security and financial security. So I can't really complain, but my daughter started her first year of college right when COVID hit. So, she was gone and then she was back, and my husband works from home, and I live with my elderly mom. So there was a lot of concern from my mom about COVID and keeping her safe, and, just kind of the normal things that make it difficult to manage kind of your work and life all of a sudden get really mixed up. But I'm fortunate that I did not have small children, and I was at a stage in my career where it wasn't nearly as difficult as it was for so many of those working mom and dads who really, really struggled. Particularly academic women have had an incredibly hard time. So yeah, it was hard not to travel, and I miss seeing people, but we had our video game nights with kind of my old graduate school crew from the University of Tennessee. And we went glamping in our RV quite a bit just to get out in nature. And, we just do what we have to do to get through it. But for me personally, it certainly wasn't as bad as it was for a lot of working moms and dads.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad to hear that. We've been fortunate as well. One of the things about COVID that's interesting is that in addition to the health dynamic part of it, the way that we have changed in terms of organizations and their work policies and practices in response to that. I mean, it just bumps right up against the very phenomena that people like you and I are interested in. So if you think about the broad topic areas of IO, do you think that there are any of them that are being most impacted by all of these changes in terms of changes in the topics that are of importance, or the theories, or the fundamental assumptions? You got a great perspective on that. So what would you say?
Yeah, we had our call for papers for COVID and employment at the Journal, and did it just really quickly after the pandemic was announced by the World Health Organization, and really didn't know what we were getting into. And I remember thinking, are we even going to get any submissions? Well, we got like over 800 submissions for the call for papers, and a lot of the work we got was really super interesting, and I think really kind of foreshadows what you're talking about. So I think models that focus on discontinuous change, interruptions, the role of time in really, really different ways, thinking about critical events that happen to people, whether it's related to the pandemic or related to their work and family life. Just think a lot of our really static way of thinking about organizational structure and processes and the experience of work are just really thrown out the window. So we've received a whole bunch of work looking at kind of discontinuous change models, also a lot of experience sampling work, just recognizing that we have to, been a lot of talk about we need to consider time better in what we do, but I think that the pandemic has made that just so incredibly apparent. I think the other thing too is, obviously telework is here to stay. So I think that, that's going to continue to be a huge topic, but I think the issues are really nuanced now in terms of the role of telework. And I think what we're seeing is that a lot of people who really thought they wanted to continue teleworking and felt like, they should be able to telework, now they're struggling with issues of isolation. And there's a lot of individual differences in terms of people's desire to do that kind of work. I think the work family literature as well has really just blown up. And I remember back at UT in grad school, people thinking that, work family issues were just kind of a woman's issue and were outside the purview of what we should study in HROB and IO. And certainly that's not the case. So, I think that there's I think looking at events and extremes and change is just going to be part of the landscape from here on out. I think the other thing that is interesting, because I think it happened more kind of simultaneous with COVID, is just so much more emphasis on equity and inclusion and allyship and issues around health equities and just societal inequities, which of course was part of COVID, but also part of Black Lives Matter, which happened during COVID, right? So I think we're going to just see a lot more kind of social consciousness type of research that's really long overdue.
Yeah. Well, and it seems to me like those themes just kind of bump up against one another as those underlying kind of assumptions impact the way that organizations try to respond and do so in fair and equitable ways.
Right. For sure.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting to me that I've seen is that it just kind of creates this context where the underlying assumptions that a manager in an organization wants to make about the employees, you can't hide from it. So it's like you either believe that boy, my employees are working off-site online, they're going to be less productive, they're going to be working half as much as they should, versus other views that see it as a good thing and that will enhance. It's just a value system that I think is hard to change, that surfaces when this hits.
Yeah, for sure. We struggle with that at the university. And at first there was this massive backlash, everyone has to come back to work, and just, this real suspicion when they allowed us all to telework, for over a year. And then a lot of the staff have been leaving the university, and now the university's kind of finally understood that it has to be a little more accommodating and get rid of some of those assumptions, right? But it's been a really interesting journey, I think. And it's been interesting to watch it unfold as an IO psychologist, right? Because it's kind of, it's what we do every day and what we're interested in studying and learning about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as we were saying earlier, all this hard work has been rewarded by you being editor of Journal of Applied Psychology. You're into it a bit now, and I'm just wondering, again, in that role, particularly going through COVID, you see so much. How would you say your views of the field have changed since before you became an editor?
Yeah, it has been much more of a change than I thought it would be. I've been associate editor at JP and also PSYCH, and but being the editor in chief has been really different for me. And I think one of the things that it's really made me realize is just how important this position is in terms of being a role model for other people,
Mhm.
and particularly for academic women and junior scholars. And so for me, a lot of my effort has really been focused on trying to be more inclusive at the journal. I mean, we're still going to have the rigorous standards that we have, but just trying to make the journal not quite so scary for junior scholars and also more welcoming for kind of a broad array of individuals. So I think just really thinking about how to pay it forward and how to use this role to really make some positive change again around diversity and inclusion and the type of work that we publish, and being more kind of open to new and different ways to think about the scholarship that we do it's been really interesting. And I've so enjoyed working with my team and getting to know a lot of outstanding scholars so well, and being able to learn from them and help them as we kind of navigate this process together. And doing it all during COVID was really just crazy. Not at all what I expected moving into the role, but it's presented a lot of, I think, great opportunities to try to take a leadership role in terms of making sure our work has impact and that we're doing things for the greater good, and that we're again, walking the talk with our values around diversity and inclusion. So that's been a big focus of what I've tried to do at the journal.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So, well, as I said at the beginning, we're chatting with you today in anticipation of your upcoming webcast. Can you give us kind of a preview and tell us why you've chosen to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm going to be doing a webcast looking at sources of funding at the National Institutes of Health. And, in the last probably decade, a lot more IO psychologists and HR and OB folks have gotten into the grant game, and a lot of funding for folks comes from the National Science Foundation. But actually, the National Institutes of Health has a budget and supports about $40 billion in funding a year. And IO psychologists are really underrepresented. And there's lots of opportunities, especially if you're interested in issues surrounding worker health and well-being, child health and development, implementation of initiatives, whether it be training initiatives or leadership initiatives in healthcare organizations. And so I was fortunate enough to get involved in NIH pretty early on in my career. And had funding from them for a long time. And it's just I thought it'd be a wonderful opportunity to get people more aware about the different funding mechanisms at NIH, and kind of a little mini boot camp on kind of how to dip your toes. It's kind of a labyrinth for many researchers, and we don't get a lot of training in grant writing, or really have a lot of knowledge about the different sources of funding that are out there. So I hope to provide kind of a little mini boot camp on NIH and some of the ways you can think about how your research might fit, what kind of collaborations you might need to develop to be viable there, as well as some kind of research design considerations and methodological things to be thinking about as you maybe make a foray into NIH. And so hopefully that'll be helpful for some particularly junior scholars who are looking for funding. And there's certainly a whole lot of opportunity for IO psychology to play a role in a lot of the different institutes at NIH and the kind of work that they're interested in funding.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they will find it interesting, and we will find it exciting to host. And we very much look forward to it. Congratulations on all your success, Lillian. And again, that webcast coming up at November 12th. that is at noon Eastern time, and you can find information on the Karma website about how to access it. So thanks so much for joining us this morning, Lillian. Take it easy and enjoy your day.
You too, Larry. Great to see you as always.
Yep.